I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and taking their time to express their opinions and show us what they'd like to have done in the budget. This is the 2015-2016 operating budget, and this is the public input session. I am County Executive Bob Culver. This year, we're taking a very conservative approach towards the budget. As many of you know, the state is still addressing its own fiscal challenges, so much so that Governor Hogan has extended the legislative session by 10 days. The state's fiscal challenges have a direct impact on the county and our citizens. You will see later in our presentation that we must focus on growing our local economy and making it more business friendly. We must also recognize that our citizens are challenged to make ends meet in their homes and businesses due to a prolonged deep recession. For these reasons, I will not be proposing any new tax increases or new fees for the upcoming fiscal year. County departments were asked to reduce their operating expenses by 2.5%. And I want to tell you how proud I am of all my departments. We exceeded that 2.5% to a point of 6.4% average overall. And we will show you what each department did. With that, I would like to again thank you all for coming out. Make your comments short. We want to get out of here no later than 8 o'clock. Due to PAC 14 and some other restrictions with the TV channels. So if you can make your points short, if somebody has already made the statement you wanted to make, just thank them and sit down. So, but anyhow, thank you again. With that, I would like to introduce the Director of Administration, Mr. Wayne Strausberg. We have Miss, oh, by the way, I had not introduced our new Finance Director to allow the public. This is Leslie Lewis, who's just joined us, if you would please. We feel very fortunate and an asset to Wicomico County. So with that, I would like for Wayne to come up and go over the presentation with you. And if you've got any questions, we'll be glad to answer them afterwards.
Good evening. I'd like to also welcome everyone here. We're extremely pleased to have you here. We thank you for taking your time, and we value your input. First of all, I'd like to reiterate our basic approach to budgeting. We match what are called recurring revenues, as you would in your household. Your paycheck that comes in each month, that paycheck that you can rely on month to month. We match those recurring revenues, and they specifically or generally come from two sources, property taxes and income taxes. We do our best to estimate those as accurately as we can, and then we try to match our recurring expenses, those expenses that we know we're going to have to fund each year on a recurring basis, the same way that you would do in your household. We then use one-time unanticipated revenue and or savings to fund our capital expenditures. So we take a very conservative approach to budgeting. As Bob mentioned, we believe that given the very fragile state of the recovery in the state and here locally, and the pressure on households and businesses, that we think that it's an inappropriate time to raise tax rates or to impose new fees. And our budget is based on flat tax rates and no new fees. Let me walk through very quickly. That's very hard to read, and I apologize. What is called the constant yield tax rate? For those of you who are familiar with the revenue cap, our property tax revenue on an annual basis can increase by the lesser of either the consumer price index for all urban consumers in December of the year, which would have been December 2014, or 2%, whichever is the smaller figure. The CPI-U for December of 14 was 0.4%. It's literally a rounding error. So our constant yield, if you were to say we want to generate the same property tax revenue that we generated last year from that same base, our property tax rate could increase from 0.9516 to 0.9549. We've chosen to leave the rate at 0.9516. Similarly, our personal property tax, which is levied on businesses, can increase can be levied at a rate of no more than 2.5 times the real property tax rate. So the maximum that we could levy, and it's hard even for me to read, is it's about $2.38. We're going to leave it flat to what it was last year, which is essentially $2.17. So we are leaving our tax rates stable to what they were last year. We think that's appropriate. Our total budgeted revenue, our recurring revenue, this is recurring revenue. This does not address any use of our fund balance. So this is recurring revenue that I referred to earlier in the discussion. Last year we budgeted $122 million in recurring revenue. This year that recurring revenue is forecast at $124 million. You may ask the question, well, gee, Wayne, if you're not raising the tax rates, how are we going to recognize an increase of $2 million in revenue? It's very simple. We had a very, very conservative revenue forecast last year on local income taxes. We had forecast or budgeted $39.5 million. Our actual in 14 came in at $43.5 million. We put the additional revenue that we derived into our fund balance. The state is projecting that income tax revenue in Wicomico County would increase by 0.8%. That came from Peter Francho's office about 2 months ago. We have discounted that increase principally because of what you're seeing at Labanal. We're going to lose some very well-paying jobs. That's going to have an income tax impact here locally, so we have discounted that. So we've taken a look at our run rate for the past several years, and we've taken a moving average for the past 3 years, and we're forecasting that our income tax revenue for the coming year will be on the order of $42 million. A little bit less than last year, again, because we believe that we're losing some well-paying jobs. And we wanted to forecast our revenue conservatively, because the worst thing you can do is to forecast revenue that you don't realize and spend assuming that you're going to achieve that revenue and then not. Let's talk about our real property taxes real quickly. I think this is an important slide to take a look at, and again, I realize that it's hard for you to see, but our real property tax base peaked in fiscal 2011. From fiscal 2011 through fiscal 15, our real property base dropped. Assessed values dropped. They dropped on the order. We lost about $1.3 billion in property base. That is an 18%, almost 19% decline in revenue. Here's a paradox that I think it's important that everybody understands. When your assessments are decreasing, the decrease in assessment takes effect immediately. It impacts the county's revenue immediately. When your property base levels out and begins to increase again, we only reassess 1/3 of the county each year. So it takes 3 full years to reassess all the properties. So if property values have leveled and or are increasing, and they're projected to increase, SDAT, State Department of Assessment and Taxation, is forecasting that our property base will increase about 0.6%. So again, it's a negligible increase. We assume that it's essentially flat. But if you're increasing your values, each year when you reassess 1/3 of the county, you then phase in that reassessment over a period of 3 years. So to fully realize the reassessment of the 3 triennials takes you 9 years. So we're forecasting that if we realize historic normal growth in our property base, which is about 2% annually, and we're not there yet, it would take 11 years to get our property base back to where it was at its peak value in 2011. So that makes us, inasmuch as property taxes are approximately half of our revenue base, when you look at that sort of a very slow climb in terms of what you're going to realize from property taxes, you've got to be very, very conservative with your spending patterns. And I really wanted that to be very clear to you. It doesn't happen quickly. It happens quickly on the downside. It happens very slowly on the upside. So we'll go back. This slide shows that it's very hard to read those numbers. Again, I apologize. Let me find. 36% of our revenue comes from local taxes. That's about $45.4 million. 51% comes from local property tax. That's real property and personal property. That's 63.9%. It's interesting, if you go back 5, 6 years, those two percentages were almost in equilibrium. They were about 45%, 45%. So we have swung towards more reliance on property taxes, and you just saw that our ability to increase revenue because of a slow-growing base is going to be restricted. Local income taxes are less predictable than property taxes. So once again, as those local income taxes shrink as a percentage and local real property taxes grow as a percentage, you're in a little bit of a pincer action when you're trying to forecast revenue and when you're calculating how much you believe you can afford to spend on a judicious basis. Our tax revenue, again, these are very hard to read, but I wanted to point out to you, our real property taxes, these are actuals. And I'll go from fiscal year 2011. Our real property tax in 2011 was $52.7 million. In 2012, it dropped to $50.5 million. 13, it went to $51.9 million. In 14, it went to 52.5. Of course, for 15, we haven't closed out the books yet, so I don't know what the actuals are going to be. On the income tax side, in 2011, our income taxes were $39.1 million. 2012, they were $41.8 million. 13, they were $41 million. And in 14, they were $43.5. We're going to estimate that we'll probably be in 15 fairly flat to 14, and we're again going to forecast something on the order of $42 million in 16 in income tax revenue. And we think that's a fairly accurate but conservative figure, and one that we can rely on. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about disparity grant. The state of Maryland, because we've got 24 separate jurisdictions and the state of Maryland imposes what I'll call homogeneous spending mandates on all the jurisdictions, the state of Maryland tries to balance the disparity in income and local wealth across the state. So they take state income tax receipts and they, for all intents and purposes, redistribute those receipts to balance out the disparities in income across the state. And what I wanted to show you here was what has occurred. The blue lines that you see, the light blue lines, the really nice tall blue lines that you see, are the formula figures that the state of Maryland is supposed to be remitting to Wicomico County. The actual lines are the red lines. Our run rate is about 48% of what we're due. And that has the effect of a very significant revenue shortfall each year for the county. In fiscal 15, the state should have remitted $13.7 million to Wicomico County. $13.7 million. We're going to receive $6.65 million. We're going to receive less than half of what was legislated. I want to talk to you a little bit more about other measures that the state has taken over the course of the recession as they bolstered, as Bob mentioned earlier, the state's fiscal circumstances cascade down to the local jurisdictions. And I want to walk you through some figures. Let me just talk in total. From fiscal 8 until fiscal 15, state actions have cost Wicomico County $78.5 million. $78.5 million. Essentially 3/4 of an annual recurring revenue in this county. The big numbers are the disparity grant each year. The other big number are highway user revenue. We're getting 10% of the highway user revenue that we're due. Those highway user revenues are derived from car registrations that the citizens of this county pay. They're supposed to come back to the county so that we can maintain our roads. They don't. The state has kept those receipts. They're using those receipts to build rapid transit in the Baltimore and Washington Metroplex. That's costing us on the order of about $7 million a year. Plus, we have to take about $4 to $5 million out of the general revenue funds so that we can keep our roads pulled together. That's a 12 to 13 million budget gap that occurs each year because of state policy, just on highway user revenue. And then add about another $7 million a year on disparity grant. You're talking on the order of $20 to $21 million a year that the state is retaining and that we can't use here locally. And I think that's critically important for everybody in this room and everybody in this county to understand. These are our total budgeted recurring operating expenses. Bob mentioned to you earlier that we had asked each department. We held public safety harmless because we felt that it was not appropriate to ask public safety to reduce their operating expenses. And of course the Board of Education was held harmless because the Board of Education's our operating contributions to the Board of Education are mandated by state formula. But we took 2.5% out, or asked for 2.5% from the rest of the county departments. We actually derived 6.4% in reductions on recurring operating expenses. We've done that while absorbing two rather large spending increases. One being we have a $910,000 recurring expenditure that will go to the Board of Education. Part of that is $384,000 in maintenance of effort. That's because of increased enrollment. The second is on the order of $532,000 in normal pension, teachers' pension funding. The third is $227,000 to the Sheriff's Department that arose from our collective bargaining agreement that we validated in the past couple of months. You will recall that that collective bargaining agreement, the Sheriff's Department was granted collective bargaining at a referendum ballot. I forget what year it was, but it was by an overwhelming majority of voters, on the order of 65%, I believe. I think the important number to look at, I'm going to take this out so that I can read our own numbers. Almost 84% of our recurring expenditures go to education, public safety, and health. So essentially 85% of our budget is almost locked and loaded. There's very, very little we can do about it. So that leaves us 15%. 15% that we can really try to manage in order to maintain our tax rate as low as we can maintain the tax rate, and yet try to catch up on a lot of deferred infrastructure spending, and there's been a tremendous amount of deferred infrastructure spending during the course of the recession. This is, I'm going to have to walk over here to take a look at this one for you. This is on a zero, this is, whoop, wrong button. We're on a zero scale right here. This is the percentage by which each one of our departments decreased their operating expenses this year. So I can walk through this with you. The county council reduced theirs on an order of 9%. State's attorney, 9%. The executive office, 4%. Elections, 11%. Who's this? Who's the nice purple? Finance, 5%. Purchasing, 10. Law, 2.5. Human resources, 2. Planning and zoning, 3. General services, 3. Who's the hero here? IT, 3%. Liquor board, 2.5%. Corrections, 2.5% emergency services, 12% public health, and 2.5% roads. I think, as Bob said, I think that's a tremendous achievement on the part of our departments and our department heads. I want to talk to you a little bit about debt, the county's debt. This is our principal and interest payments by year, starting with fiscal 10 and going to fiscal 14. And what I'd like to point out on this chart is that the red lines are the principal and interest on borrowings for the Board of Education, principally school construction and significant school maintenance projects. The smaller blue lines are those expenditures for the rest of the county. Our total debt service balance for general obligation bonds as of June 30th, 2014, you can see that 11% of our total debt is attributable to general fund or general county departments, and 86% is associated with Board of Education projects. There's been a lot of interest in Board of Education spending. It's been expressed at several council meetings now. This is a 5-year trending of Board of Education spending. This includes our operating, our maintenance of effort, appropriation, plus principal and interest. Fiscal 12, it was $47 million. It's grown to almost $52 million forecast for fiscal 16. We talked earlier about capital. We are proposing to spend about 2.5% of recurring revenue on capital projects. The majority of those capital projects are those what we call pay-go projects. County pays for these out of general revenue or our fund balance. And these are embedded in the capital improvement plan, which was approved several weeks ago. In addition to that, our departments ask for departmental capital. You can see there's very little department capital until you get to roads. Road maintenance is $4 million. Harken back to what I said about highway user revenue. That $4 million has to come out of the general fund because we're not getting our highway user revenue from the state of Maryland. It represents, departmental capital spending represents about 3.5% of recurring revenue. Talk a little bit about the history of our designated and undesignated fund balance. The bars in red are funds that are restricted, very special purpose funds that we can't touch except under certain circumstances. The blue lines are what are called unrestricted or undesignated funds. We've built our fund balance back to its pre-recession level. We're at about $30 million now. I want to read you something. I think you will recall that our bond rating was upgraded this past year, And I want to read you from Moody's what Moody's said. Moody's said, what could move the rating up? Continued growth and diversification in the tax base. In other words, we need to grow our local economy. Continued growth in reserve levels. The national standard for reserve levels, unrestricted reserve levels, is about 6 months of operating cash. Ours represents 3 months of operating cash. What could move the rating down? A deterioration of reserves. Declines in tax base and excessive current projections, a significant increase in debt burden. In other words, what Wall Street is saying is, you better have strong fund balances and you shouldn't be using your fund balance for recurring expenses. With that, we're going to invite public comments.
I have a question.
Come up to the mic.
I would like some clarification about the statement that when property values decline, the hit is immediate, but when they rise, we only assess a third every year. Why does it drop for everyone? Aren't we assessing a third every year, and wouldn't a third drop? I don't understand.
Yes, it drops, but it drops immediately. It doesn't phase in over 3 years. That drop in assessed value occurs immediately
For all properties?
for the properties that were reassessed.
And when they go up for a third of the properties that were.
A third of the properties go up, but the increase is phased in over 3 years. So if your assessment, let's say your home was previously assessed at $100,000. SDAT comes in and they reassess it at $80,000. That drop in assessment is immediate, and the county loses 20% of its assessable base on your property. When it increases, and let's say it goes back up to $100,000, it takes 3 years to get to the $100,000. They phase it in 1/3 in each of the 3 years. So it'll go up from 80,000 to 83,005
Okay.
to 86.
And who decides that? I'm just curious.
That's mandated by the state.
Okay.
That's mandated by the state. So the climb out again, the paradox is in an environment where property values are dropping, the drop is immediate
Right.
in terms of its impact on revenue. When they begin to go back up, you don't realize that increase in value and that increase in revenue immediately. It's phased in over 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kay Gibson, resident of Wicomico County. I want to thank all the county employees that have worked so hard on this budget and tell you how much I appreciate your understanding of the financial condition that many of our residents, including me, are in, that are living on Social Security. We can't afford to pay more property tax right now, and we appreciate you holding the rates. We're lucky we can afford food, medication. We keep our utilities turned down. We're cold. We don't have more money to give. We can't handle the increased costs that we've had. And I really appreciate the consideration that you've all shown for us. Thank you.
Any other comments, input, ideas?
First off, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and for Bob to have in the input session this evening. My name is Gary Hammer. I've been a resident of Wicomico County for 38 years now. I plan on retiring here in a year or so, and I've grown up on the Eastern Shore my whole life. I have been employed by the Wicomico County Board of Education for 38 years. I actually was originally born in Chestertown, a couple hours up the road here, so still part of the Eastern Shore. Tonight I'm here in a little different mode. I've attended a lot of county council meetings in the past as a resident. Tonight I'm here as a representative for quite a few people, actually. As president of the Wicomico County Education Association, I'm here representing the teachers and the educational support staff that work in the Wicomico County school system, keeping it running, doing the best they can with what they have every day, treating their students like their own children in most cases. been asked to do a lot for a long time on a very little, and I applaud every single one of them for doing that. It's about 2,100 hardworking folks. And sometimes I think when we talk about county employees, we forget they are also residents and income earners and taxpayers. They have property, they have bills, and their income helps support everybody else's income and business within the community. That money doesn't stay in everybody's pocket. It goes out to all the different businesses in town. And I think the other thing that we have to understand is our county employees, particularly our teachers and our educational support staff, have been living on a fixed income too. My mom is on Social Security. I think they got a COLA. A lot of the county employees haven't seen a COLA for a while. I know I have educational support personnel, instructional assistants that are making $12,000 a year. They're cold. They can't buy all the food they want also. And they're working 40 hours a week. They're not retired. I sympathize with both groups, don't get me wrong. It is very hard to live on that amount of money. So I think when we talk about job growth, the first thing we have to do is make sure we don't eliminate people who already have jobs. We don't want to lay people off, that are working and adding to the economy, including teachers and educational support personnel. I think we also have to understand what brings economic growth into a community. People have to want to live here. Okay, if there's a high crime rate, they don't want to live here. If the schools are not good, families do not want to live here. The less people you have living here, the less property tax you can collect. So you're almost digging yourself in a hole. When you're looking at economic growth, most studies will say you need to invest in a place that's not having economic development. You don't keep cutting things. Nobody's going to want to come here. So we need to invest in this county to make people want to come here. Good schools, good places to go to, whether it's parks and recs or whatever. We got the beach, we got good fishing. We just need to get people down here and want to make them stay here. The good thing, I remember Mr. Middleton used to be work at the Central Office. He used to always say, if we can get teachers in here and we get them married off in about 3 years, they're going to be here forever. Okay, they're going to want to stay here. It's the same for people who move here. They want to have to stay here. So, what creates a good school? Well, I see a lot of folks here from West Salisbury and a lot of other schools tonight. I think most of them would agree one of the most important things about a good school is who works in it. The principal, the support staff, the teachers. The second great thing that makes a good school are the parents of that school being involved. Okay? It is important, though, in today's technology that we have good school buildings. Okay? I don't know what priority some people may feel. In my opinion, I've taught in very bad buildings. I've taught in very good buildings. Do I think children in good buildings get a better education? Yes, I do. But I also think a good teacher can make a difference in a child's life in a not so good building. I think as a community we have to come to the realization is this is our community. And we have to make sure that we provide the things that we think a good community should have. Now, there might be a lot of discussion on how to do that. But I think good schools is one thing that we have to do. And keeping people. I mean, it's very hard. Our support staff and our teachers, a lot of them are running to other counties. Can't blame them. I mean, any of us will take a new job at a higher pay scale if we live close enough to get to work. Just common sense. So right now we're looking at about 17th starting salary in Wicomico County. But once we get a little bit farther along, we drop to 25 out of 26. It's hard to retain people. So once again, those families who probably would like to live here, who like the area, just don't stay because they can't afford to. I get confused sometimes. Maybe you can answer this question for me tonight. When we're talking about the budget, when the budget that you had up there, as far as what part of the budget is that county pays for, correct? My understanding is that really the state of Maryland is paying for the majority. The taxpayers of the state of Maryland are paying for the majority of our school system, because those taxpayers, state funds, is paying for 70.75%. 70% of the Wicomico County Board of Education budget is coming from state taxpayers. Now, we're all state taxpayers. but we're not paying for 70% of the school budget. The county taxpayers are paying for actually 22.34% of the Board of Education budget. Is that correct?
I think it's a bit higher than that, but one thing I would point out to you, are you aware that Wicomico County, in terms of per capita wealth, is the lowest per capita wealth county in the state of Maryland?
Well, I think maybe I'm
And we
aware.
exert the 8th highest tax effort in the state of Maryland?
I think maybe what I'm saying is the reason that we have that poverty level was for the reasons we just discussed. I mean, we've seen our
Do
property
you also
value
realize
go.
we just
Wait a minute, I
we
think-
spent
I
$82 million
understand, sir.
on 2 new
And
schools?
I understand, and I appreciate that fact.
You should.
I definitely do. I'm not arguing with you on that point. I was simply asking a question. Didn't mean to want to have any drama. Are you okay? I just asking.
I'm fine. You've been
All
talking
right,
for
thank
you've
you,
been
sir.
talking for quite some
I appreciate
time.
it. Okay, well, I'm about done. So what I'm saying is, I didn't see anybody else jump up. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say that we would definitely appreciate an increase for our employees in Wicomico County and the Board of Education. I don't think we've been asking for much. We've tried to work within the county in the last couple of years with frozen pay scales and no increases. I see some construction going on in the county. Hopefully, if we keep to in the economic development side, that is possible. So thank you for your time. I'm sorry if I took up to anybody else's time.
Thank you.
I just have one more statement I want to make.
Sure.
I do want to say I am a school teacher, but I will say I think it's maybe not appropriate, or it feels wrong on my end, to talk about an aim at restoring pre-recession values for some parts of the budget, but not for other parts of the budget. To show that the increase in Board of Ed spending over the last, since 2012, has gone up the way it has, you certainly haven't shown what it was before that. And to talk about building pre-recession values for the fund balance, but to not talk about rebuilding pre-recession appropriations for education is, I think, not appropriate.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Harold Scrimger. I've lived in Worcester County for 20 years, but in the last year I moved to Wicomico County. And I have a proposal to help you save money.
Thank you.
It's come to my attention recently that you have 3 full-time attorneys on staff, plus 2 assistants, a total of 5 people in the county legal department. I did some research today, and Accomack County has 1 attorney with a shared secretary. Somerset County does not have an attorney, and Worcester County has 1 attorney with a shared secretary. So it would appear that your county attorney's office has double the attorneys and staff of the 3 surrounding counties. I would love to see some of those attorneys fired and maybe some additional teachers hired. I think every attorney is probably worth the salary of 2 or 3 teachers. And this has also created a conflict of interest where the county attorneys represent the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission. And I feel that you'd have more development and more job opportunity if these boards were independent of the county office, i.e. if you're a developer and you want to challenge a zoning administrator's decision or ruling, you have to go through the gatekeeper to the Board of Appeals, which is the county attorney. I think if the offices knew that you had a way to appeal their decisions, there'd be more development, more projects could get permitted, more tax base, more income, more money for teachers. So again, I'm asking you to look at your budget for the legal office and find out why we need 5 people when other counties seem to do it on 1 or 1.5 people. Thank you.
In response to that, I would ask you to look at what those other counties spend on outsourcing their legal fees. You can't look at the number of attorneys they have solely. You have to look at what their total legal expense is. So if they're paying money for outside attorneys, you have to factor that in. With regard to the Board of Planning Appeal, I'm not quite sure why you think that has to go through law. You can appeal
No, we have,
You can appeal through the Planning and Zoning
But-
Department.
no, you can't. The gatekeeper to the Board of Appeals and Planning Commission are the same county attorneys that work with the county staff to determine the zoning regulations. In Worcester County, we have private attorneys that represent all the boards as well as Somerset, and they're paid by the applicants to the Board of Appeals, so there's no outsourcing. When you apply to the Board of Appeals, you pay a review fee, and either Mr. Gaskell or Mr. Porter represent the boards. Here, the county staff represents the boards, so it's kind of a conflict of interest where they're interpreting the law, but also denying you the access to the appeal process. It's a very unique circumstance. Out of all the counties I do business with, this is the only county that happens. And
I'd be glad to look at that.
yeah, and also Sonny Bloxham handles it all, no outsourcing.
I know Sonny very well.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Joan Smith.
Hi.
I'm a Wicomico County resident and big taxpayer. I am also a teacher, a very proud teacher of Wicomico County, and I have been for more than 20 years. Teachers make a big difference in this community. I've learned that through the years. We're losing too many kids to other parts of this state and to other states. We need to develop this community, and the teachers are at the base.
Mhm.
The teachers are the ones who will help the development of this community. You spoke a moment ago about losing big business, and we are. And there's rumor about losing more big business. If big business could count on the quality of students that we are preparing for the workforce, as well as for higher education, maybe they would stay here, and big business would come into our community and spur on the economic development. We have a lot of buildings going up in this community, and many of those units are going to produce hundreds of students who will be coming into the school system. Are all of those, have you in your creating the big plan for this county, have we considered how much tax revenue is developed from them? It's my understanding that as individual family owners of homes in this county, we pay quite a bit of taxes. But how much tax is stimulated from the apartment buildings that are going up and the many children who are coming from those apartment buildings? It was at one time in the past considered a movement from an apartment dwelling into a single homeowner dwelling. And then the tax revenue seemed to be consistent with the number of students being educated in that community. But that seems to have gone by the wayside. We need to keep funding education so that this community, the jobs are stimulated for all the people in this community, and that we're not losing jobs, but gaining the respect that we really deserve as a part of Maryland.
Thank you. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Wayne. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm John Frederickson, Superintendent of Schools. I'm also a resident of Wicomico County and a taxpayer here. And just a couple of comments. I'd like to suggest that there was a graphic up there that showed the capital expenditures, and it showed that the schools were the largest. We have 15,000 students. We have the largest amount of square footage of buildings. Our buildings have an average age that's quite old, and yet we get, every year when we get inspections from the state, they say that we have excellent maintenance. And I encourage to be aware of that. Second thing, I'd like to encourage that the graphs all be zero-based. The one that showed all the major cuts that some of the departments took this year. When it came to the school budget, it looked like it was screamingly jumping up. If you put a zero-based graphic on that, it'd be much more flat. Thank you. Also, we're seeking funding to provide reading. We would be delighted to go back and recapture the $14 million that were cut a few years back and put that into reading instruction services. We believe that reading is the core to everything. Back in the olden days when many of us were going to school, we got little formulas that we had to do our mathematics in. And you do all the problems, and then the teacher would assign you one or two of those three horrible word problems, and we all hated those. Guess what? all the problems that the kids work on today are word problems. So reading is key to everything. If we look at the reading success for kids, we can tell what things are going to happen to them. If they're reading weak at 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, chances are much higher that they're going to drop out of school. And we all know what happens when kids drop out of school. I don't have to tell you that. We are pushing fees and other sources of income as much as we possibly can. We certainly encourage that the county do the same thing to help support our kids in the schools, because that's going to make a difference, whether it's purchasing technology so that they can do their texts and they can do their other work in an efficient manner, or they can even drop the amount of stuff that they're carrying in those little backpacks they're carrying back and forth on the bus. We also want to have the people. We need the teachers in the classrooms, and the teachers need to be well prepared. That means they need professional development so that they have the best skills possible when they're teaching reading or math or science or whatever the subject area is. And finally, a couple of items. Number one, we want to collaborate with the county. We've been looking at some other ideas, and we're looking forward to continuing our discussions with the county executive and other staff and the county council to see if there are ways that we can find to save money with our agent, because we have a large organization. We have a lot of employees. We have a lot of services we provide. So does the county. We look forward to continuing those discussions and dialogues to find ways to collaborate. And we've studied a lot in terms of the West Salisbury school building. And we really appreciate the opportunity to sit down at the table and work on that. We've studied it, and all of our studies to this point say a new building on that site. I believe that's right, but you know what? If we're going to take one more shot at it to make sure we put every dollar in the right place, I'm willing to sit down at the table and work together to collaborate, because we're all in this together here in Wicomico County. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Good evening. My name is Amy Eskridge. I'm the principal at Salisbury Middle School. I am also a mother of 3 students in Wicomico County. I have a student at Bennett Middle School, one at Wicomico High School, and one at Mardella High School. I am here tonight to advocate for more reading intervention teachers within our county. As the number of students living in poverty continues to climb in our schools, so do the number of students who are coming into our schools without the basic understanding of their letters, sounds, and basic phonics skills. As students move into the upper elementary and middle school grades, we are continuing to see issues with reading, fluency, and comprehension deficits well below the grade level. If we expect our students to make gains that will bring them up to grade level, we must provide them with the needed small group instruction provided by a reading intervention teacher. Many people in our county say we have plenty of teachers. We do have a lot of teachers, but we also have a lot of students that are not literate at this time. And so we cannot teach those students in groups of 30 and think that they are going to rise. We must look at providing our students with the adequate instruction. At Salisbury Middle School, our special education teachers and our 1.5 reading intervention teachers work to meet the needs of a diverse population, which includes 55% students who receive free and reduced lunch and 14 students that receive services in the area of special education. This year, our school and the Board of Education, all the schools, are working with an RTI model. Teachers have received professional development on how to reach reluctant learners. I'm proud to say that at our middle school, the reading labs have seen 37% of our students show between a 0 to 50-point gain. 37% of students, or 34% of students, have made a 51 to 99-point gain in their Lexile scores, and 30% of students have shown 100 or more points of growth in their Lexile scores. At Salisbury Middle School, we have also seen many students make 1 year's growth in a half a year's time with the adequate reading intervention, but we need more. We have 40% or more of our students that are not currently reading at grade level, and we do not have the staff to meet those needs. We have crunched, the Board of Education has crunched, and the pot is getting smaller and smaller. We talk about the revenue brought into our county. We talk about people wanting to move into our county. We talk about workers in our county. If we want to bring more people into our county, we have to work to make our county more literate. If we're going to send out students to employers and they are not literate, the employers are not going to hire them. We are not going to see growth within our county. I would like to say that At the middle school level, we are working hard, and at the elementary school level we are as well. But please note that this has to be done by pulling small focus groups of 6 students. You can't have groups of 30. If we want our students to be literate, we must put the manpower behind reading intervention. It is my hope that by adding more money and funds into the area of reading intervention positions at the elementary level, we at the middle school level will not see these deficits in future years. We as a community should be aiming to send each of our students out into the workforce, to college, and into the military. In order to do so, they must be literate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culver, for hosting this evening's opportunity to hear from county stakeholders. My name is Dave Harris. I'm a father, a county citizen, and principal of Fruitland Primary School. Wicomico County educators have done a remarkable job of doing more with less as our county continues to experience income instability. With a county tax base that continues to struggle and experience limitations, I do believe that educators recognize that there are limits to available funding. These limits have us looking for opportunities, strategies, and programs which will maintain the balance between available resources and maximizing student achievement. One such strategy is formal reading intervention, as Ms. Eskridge was just talking about. By using research-based, proven materials in a small group environment under the direct instruction of a highly qualified reading interventionist, we as educators do see struggling readers making sufficient progress. Unfortunately, we can no longer meet the needs of those students with our current staffing capacity. At this point, the general funds support only 1 half-day reading intervention teacher in each of our elementary schools. This is not enough. Lack of staffing means that students will be left behind and an achievement gap will widen. Mr. Culver, you've been submitted a budget that includes additional funding for the hiring of highly qualified reading intervention teachers. As someone who is becoming well-practiced at directing limited resources to areas of significant need, I ask that you put our struggling students first and provide our students a well-proven opportunity to succeed. Reading intervention is not an experiment, not a shot in the dark or a passing whim. Reading intervention is a well-researched and documented strategy to improve student performance. It will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lewis Watson. I pastor here in the city, Salisbury, Maryland, First Baptist Church, and I represent the Watchmen with One Voice Ministerial Alliance, who are here tonight, and along with other concerned citizens in regard to the West Salisbury Elementary School. We were at a county council meeting not long ago and heard something mentioned about $2.1 or $2.2 million that had been set aside for the school.
Yes,
while we understand that there is a process that you have to go through in order to get things done, we do understand that there was at one time the school was put on the docket to be rebuilt. However, since the new executive director has come in office, it has been put on the back burner. So we've come tonight to inquire and to ask, and if you could give some explanation as to why this is, and if you are going to put this back on the docket, because as you've heard many who have stood here prior to my coming about the importance of education, and any of us who have gone to that school or have been to that school lately know that that school is not up to par for teaching children in the 21st century. The lighting is bad. They have to go outside in inclement weather to go to the library. They don't have sufficient heating, sufficient cooling. Yesterday, or Monday, pardon me, Tuesday, when we were at the county council meeting, there was a lady there. We talked to her about her child who hasn't been able to go to school because when it's hot in that school, he has asthma. He has to come home. And that's not right. And so we would like some explanation as to what is going to be done about it. Are you putting it back on the docket? And we would like to hear from someone at this time.
I can tell you, and I will also invite the executive to add any comments to what I would make, sir. We've had 2 very productive meetings with the Board of Education. We have a monthly meeting. Dr. Fredrickson referred to the fact that we meet, try to collaborate. We've had 2 very good discussions about how to move the West Side Elementary project forward. We will continue those discussions. We certainly understand the need. We're trying to find a way to meet that need and at the same time afford that need.
But are you putting it back? Is it going to be a priority? Because from what we have heard, it's really not a priority right now. What I'm hearing, or what we've heard, is you want to renovate it, and the definition that I'm getting for renovating is you want to patch up some things, maybe put a little air conditioning and a little heating unit or whatever, and some other things. But we're talking about a new school built from the ground.
We understand that. Do you want to address this, Bob?
Sure, not at all. The day I got sworn in, I had 3 hours before I had to make a decision on the bond bill. It was $1.2 million that was asked for by the Board of Education. Sure, I'm sorry. It was $1.2 million that was asked for by the Board of Education. I pulled that bond off at that time. Now, since that time, I have been over to the school. I have met with Dr. Fredrickson, been with the meetings going on. We put $2 million out of our savings account to take care of the problems and keep that school within the queue of moving ahead. Now,
sir, are you finished?
Go ahead.
Okay. Whatever you've done, whatever you've put forward, the 2.1 million, 2.2 million, however much it is, still that does not provide for our children the kind of environment for educating them properly as they should. To see those children learning in like a closet with no ventilation, no windows, is very discouraging. Someone mentioned a few moments ago, you will never attract, not that you don't already have qualified teachers, but other teachers that could bring something to the table to teach in that kind of environment. I would think that our children would be priority at the top of the list, and that we would do whatever we needed to do tonight or whenever you meet to find a way of funding that school, a method of funding. If it was done for North Salisbury, if it was done for Pemberton, if it was done for Bennett Middle and Bennett High, it could be done for West Salisbury Elementary School.
And Reverend Watson, I'm not disagreeing with that. My children also went to that school. It was a first grade center.
But your children are not there, and I don't think, Mr. Carver, no disrespect, that you would have anybody in your family going to that school under the conditions that those children have to learn. Well, when they went to that school, I went to that school too in 1970.
Okay.
But at that time, the school was fairly new. But now, over this time has passed, there's the lighting, you know, when you go to school, children ought to be excited. They ought to be enthused. They ought to look forward to going to school. You can't look forward to going to a cold school when it's cold, or hot school when it's hot. You don't have the proper technology or advanced technology as other schools are having in the 21st century. I just don't think it's right, and I think it's something that you and the county council need to revisit, and we need to put this back on the docket, and we need to make this priority, and we need to find a way, as you have found other ways. If you can find a way to put money in a stadium, you can find a way to put money in that West Salisbury school.
All right. Let's go back on that one more time on the stadium, and let's stop this on the stadium, okay? The stadium was leased to Seventh Inning Stretch, which subleases to the Baltimore Orioles. That lease was already prepared. Those were requirements by the Baltimore Orioles that needed to do that in order to keep the team here. Otherwise, we're going to lose a $10 million stadium. There is a lease that takes care of that. So that has nothing to do. That's just simply a separate business that the county is into. So I hate to see you all keep bringing that forward. As far as West Salisbury School, I cannot agree with you more. We need a set plan as to what we're going to do. I refuse to go ahead until we know. And Dr. Fredrickson and I have spoke about this. We don't know right now if this is going to be a 250-student school or a 650-student school. That makes a difference of about $20 million, Reverend Watson. And with that much money tied up, I want to know where we're headed with that. That's why we're having these meetings. That's why we're trying to get this straight. It may only take another month. It may take 6 months. I don't know. Dr. Frederickson, the Board of Education, Dr. Townsend, they've got to do a vetting process of letting the public of Wicomico County know what schools are going to close. We have 23 schools, I believe, something like that. We're going to consolidate some of the schools. And the school board's plan of consolidating schools and being able to cut an administrative staff almost 600,000 or 700,000, I believe is what he said, is a brilliant idea. We should have looked at this a long time ago. But the community, the small community schools are going to be closing somewhat to make these bigger schools so that they can be more cost effective. So I do want to work on this. I have no plan on stopping this. As I said, I had 3 hours from the day I was sworn in to the time this was. This project just came up from $21 million to $41 million, and I'm sitting there after 3 hours scratching my head as to what way we can go ahead and go about this. Yes, it's going to be on the board, but it's going to be between the council sitting down, the executive's office sitting down, and the Board of Education. I plan on keeping those going. But
and I appreciate that, and I understand what you said. And I understand, as we all do, there's a process that you have to go through. We know this is not going to happen overnight. All we want to hear from you and the council is that you are recommitting and that you are going to be committed to making this a priority and putting this back on the docket. I know you've got to take time to do your studies or whatever, but we want to hear that this is a priority and this is going back on the docket and you're going to make this commitment to do it.
It has been a priority with me. Since I took it off the bond bill, it has been a priority. I have met. Let me tell you what I'm doing for schools, okay? Mardella High School has never had a track. You can ask Mr. Ford. I am the first person in this county to put that back on to make these schools back right. I think Mardella is as important to me as Bennett High School is. And I'm not going to see one school cut for the sake of another. I'm going to make sure that every school is brought up to standard, brought up to good learning conditions. We're down to 2 schools that don't have air conditioning. I want both of those taken care of. So, yes, West Side is a primary, just as Northwestern, West Salisbury, I'm sorry. I live in Whitehaven, so West Side is what I hear most of the time, West Salisbury. But just as much as Mardella is a priority to me, Northwestern's a priority. There's another school that needs work. Beaver Run, we're working very hard right now to get city water and sewer out there to that school. So yes, they're all priority. Am I going to say there's one means more to me than the other? No, there's not one that means more to me than the other. There's ones that have more pressing issues than others, and that's what I'm trying to handle. You know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm going to put it back in tomorrow. No, sir. But I will tell you that I'm not going to stop working on it with the Board of Education, with Mr. Foray, with Mr. Fitzgerald, with Mr. William, with Dr. Frederickson and Dr. Townsend. We will continue these things. I've been in office for 5 months now, and it's kind of been of a whirlwind because there's been a lot going on. As I said, I've been able to keep the budget this year. And having to spend $2.5 million more, I was able to save $2 million so that your taxes don't go up, you know, and trying to keep that so these families have a place to go. We are working on trying to bring businesses in here. You know, I have met with the governor's office, his economic development, as well as trying to bring people in here. I realize the schools are important. I think it's 4 of my family members that are teachers. So I in no way want to cut the teachers. But I also have people that work out to that landfill out there in the sun every day that they have not gotten an increase either. And I need to take care of them as much as I need to take care of every teacher in this town and every building in here. So I am promising you that it's not going to be dropped on my desk. I'm not like that. I'm very hands-on, and I've been involved with it. But, you know, to stand up here and make promises just so you get quiet, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, we're not going to be quiet.
I don't want you to be.
We're not going to be quiet. And while you cannot make us a promise, we can make you one, because we are promising you we're going to keep showing up.
Good.
And we're going to keep working at this and pursuing this until you and that county council make a commitment to the West Side Salisbury School, because I believe it was next in line after this Bennett School thing to be school to be rebuilt. And we're going to keep showing up.
That's
and
great.
We will keep worrying you. We have over 2,000. We have over 2,000 plus signatures.
Good. And I appreciate that.
People have signed, And we are registered voters here. I think you need to hear us, and you need, and the county council, I would think, need to revisit this and certainly make this, as you keep saying, you can't make this a commitment, but I think that I would want to think that you think these children in Wicomico County are important enough for you to make that a commitment for our future.
The
Thank
children
you
are
very
very
much.
important to me. And let me tell you, in addition to West Salisbury School, when that school was torn down and have to be built again, we are going to have to build another 9 to 10, maybe $15 million school for the alternative school. So know that. Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Willie, where would the alternative school go?
Let me step in for a second.
Let me share some thoughts with you tonight, if I could. Wayne, you and Bob both. I'm Ron Willie. I'm a lifelong resident of Wicomico County and proud to have been a lifelong resident. Spent 44 years in the school system and now serve as the president of the Wicomico Board of Education. You asked earlier, Bob, that we not repeat things that others have said, but just to say an amen to them. So I want to first say an amen to the folks who spoke about the presentation, Wayne, tonight, because I felt like it was not a balanced presentation. It sure made the Board of Education look like that we were rolling in funds while everybody else was giving up their funds, and that's not the case. As you know, and as Bob knows, as a county council member, the Board of Education budget has suffered severe cuts for over 5 years. We've been cutting and cutting and cutting as we present our budget. Facilities have seen major cuts. All departments have seen major cuts at the board level. The two things we have tried to protect and will continue to try to protect are, number one, the instructional program for students, and number two, our recruiting and retaining of quality teachers. Those are the backbone of what we do, and we cannot give up to that. And I will say to you, there is no apology from where I stand for the budget that we submitted to you. We would be less than responsible to the citizens of this county if we did not give you a budget that represented the needs of the education system. I didn't say the wants. I did not say the wants. There are a lot of wants we've already had to say no to. There are two things in the budget this year that people are pleading for us to be able to fund, and I plead with you and the council members. You've heard about the need for reading intervention teachers, a critical need. When we had our open budget hearing, principals from many, many schools came and said, please give us some additional reading intervention teachers to help students who are struggling. And the second need that you'll see in our budget request is for ESOL teachers, because we have a growing population of students who don't know the English language and are needing intervention help. So you'll see those as two new things, but the other things in our budget represent our needing to run the school system on a day-by-day basis. And yes, I know you will say, well, that's above maintenance of effort, Mr. Willie, which we're required to give you. Yes, it is, but I make no apology for asking you for more than maintenance of effort. We need that if indeed we want, and we mean when we say education is a priority, and we want to attract business, we want people to want to come here and live, we've got to have a strong education system for that to happen. Which is why, as Reverend Watson has pleaded tonight, the people at West Salisbury deserve a 21st century school. We cannot take and renovate a school and put the technology in it that we need and do the things we need with a modern media center instead of a portable building, which they now have. We need a new school at West Salisbury. And it's not something we came up with yesterday. As you know, those plans have been going on for years, and there's been all kinds of reviews made of renovation versus new school. We need to move forward with it, and as Reverend Watson said, it's time we made a commitment to say, yes, we're going to get it done, And we've got things done in this county. We've done it in the past. We can do it again. And I say, let's go forward.
I'm going to take, I'd like to take a couple of minutes and address some of the comments that have been made.
You might want to address this with your
Would-
comments.
Just hold a second, please. Reverend Watson, you've asked us to put the school back in the queue. We have restored the funding that was requested. It is in the queue. It's in the CIP. We didn't borrow the money because we didn't know exactly what we were going to do. It doesn't make sense to borrow money when you don't know what you're going to do. We took $2.2 million out of our fund balance to honor the request that Mr. Foray made to keep the school in the queue. I was in a meeting with Mr. Foray, what day was it? Last week? Whenever it was. To bring that school to fruition is going to take 4 years. They're in the planning phase. What they've asked for is funding for the planning phase. They have it. They have the money they requested. It's in the CIP. To Mr. Willie's comments, I'd like to. I want to address the $14 million issue for about the 20th time. Good. The county, when they were funding the Board of Education at that level, burned their fund balance down to $10 million. At the beginning of this presentation, I showed everyone that the state is costing this county $22 million a year. I can't print money. When you say to me that you want me to restore your funding to pre-recession levels, when we were getting highway user revenue, we were getting our disparity grant. The bottom hadn't fallen out of our property tax base. The money was there. It's not there anymore. I'll go back to public safety and education representing 85% of our budget. Where in the world do you think we're going to find $14 million? It's not there. It's not there. And you can keep going back to pre-recession as much as you want to. The world changed, and we have to adapt to that change. That money isn't there. Accept that. It isn't there. I can't make it any clearer than that. Unless you want to give up police protection, unless you want to give up the judiciary, unless you want to close the detention center. Where's the money going to come from? 85% of the budget is spoken for with core services. Where's it going to come from? When you tell me where $22 million is going to come from that the state has confiscated, I'll be happy to sit down and talk to you about how we can spend it. It's about as simply as I can put it. Yes, ma'am.
I understand what Mr. Carver is saying, but I'm understanding he's contradicting himself because he had talked to me, and he said that him and the board is getting on board with each other, but every time I talk to each one of them, it's a contradiction. So I don't know what's what, because he told me last night that the board going to ask them for $20 million about building their alternative school, and I told him use the portables and put the school back where it was, and that $20 million could go to West Salisbury School. So he told me talk to somebody at the board. So I talked to Mr. Federson. He said he's not looking that way. They don't talk about putting the portables back. So it's a contradiction. I don't know what's going on. But Mr. Carver, if you remember when you got voted in that night, you the one brought up about the shorebirds and what you were going to do with the shorebirds and stuff, and then you stand up here and tell us, get off the kick, when you the one brought it up because nobody knew nothing about it. I mean, you the one brought it up, and like I asked you last night, he keep hollering about where's the money come from. I asked you where'd the money come from to work on the shorebirds. So, I mean, like he said, he only had 3 minutes or 3 whatever he's saying. But I'm just saying, when we had these meetings, and if y'all meeting, y'all should come with truth. That's what you should do, and maybe the people won't be so upset, because we are getting a runaround. I mean, you talking about, first you keep saying West Side, so that means West Salisbury is not important, because you should know what you're fighting on. That's what you should know. And the second thing is, we need to just come together as a group and stop hiding stuff or start playing games or whatever going on and just get this thing right. Because one thing, like Mr. Watson is saying, we're not a priority. You can hear it when he got upset. You know, he got upset because you questioned what's going on. It's no reason to get upset. All you got to do is honor what you got to do, or just sit down with the main people and y'all come to a conclusion. Now, I've been hearing contradictions since I've been out there. The board's not right, the council's not right, a whole lot of things are not right. So how can you keep putting all this stuff right here and nobody knowing what's going on? All we doing is sitting here bickering and arguing and stuff. Like the man said, we was on the list. How hard is it to put us back on the list? I mean, you say you're working on it, but you've not even given us a chance to feel comfortable that we can trust you. I mean, the way you're talking, like, we got to be quiet because you're getting upset and you talking about the man talking about 14 this and that. That's not the point. The point is we are grown folks. And we need to act like we're grown folks, and we need to work together. We all know that West Salisbury need to work. We know that. But, like I'm saying, you want to kind of think you're going to pacify us with $2.2 million. You know in your heart you cannot fix that school no kind of way with $2.2 million, because by the time the contractors get in there and stuff like that, it's going to go up, 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 and then you could have built a new school. And the thing about it is, ain't nobody's mad. I mean, really, nobody's mad. Everybody's working for what we need, and what we need for our students, our teachers. And like I said, we got brilliant college students leaving Salisbury to go across the bridge and everywhere else, because you don't give them a purpose or place here to work. So I know you want to say something. Don't give me a sit down. Bye.
No, that's okay. You're fine. I don't think you understood what I said. No, I don't think you do, because what I said was, what the Board of Education requested is in the CIP and is in the budget. They asked for $2.2 million. They're only in a planning phase. They're not ready to build anything. We put what they requested back in the budget. We simply didn't borrow the money. We took it out of our reserves. We have funded what they requested. They're on the docket. West Salisbury Elementary is back in the CIP for reconstruction and or replacement. It's in the CIP, sir. And if you weren't told that, I certainly apologize, but if that hasn't been communicated to you by the Board of Education, I can't help that.
No, that has not.
Okay.
And I met with Dr. Fredrickson, and we have been to 2 council meetings, and that what you have just mentioned has never been mentioned, indicated, stated, or anything that this was back on the docket.
I'm trying to find something for you.
Okay.
Just bear with me. Just bear with me. Andrea. Yeah, would you like to speak while I try to find something?
How about if I promise not to talk about a new school? Would that help any? My name is Andrea Bursler. I am a Wicomico County resident. I moved here 3 years ago and chose this community. I'm also the executive director of Wicomico Public Libraries. And we've heard an awful lot about literacy this evening, so I'm going to add a little to that. And I'm going to say that Wicomico Public Libraries is one of the best investments this county can make. The library provides educational resources, literacy support, and assistance to children and adults, encourages business growth and development, and is a community and cultural hub. We do all of these things through physical and online resources and our wide range of programs. The library continues to look to broaden those programs. We are pleased to announce we will be unveiling 2 new online resources next week during National Library Week. We will be unveiling an online streaming movie, music, and audiobook service called Hoopla, and an online educational, adult educational and enrichment series called Gale Courses. Both only require a library card. Literacy and education are solutions. We heard this morning in this very room from our state's attorney, Matt Massarello, that one of the keys to solving the crime issues in our community and the poverty issues in our community is literacy. He told us that 78% of juvenile offenders do not read any higher than the 5th grade reading level, that 14% of our population is functionally illiterate, and that future prison sizes are determined by the reading levels of elementary school students. A lack of literacy, the ability to read, comprehend, and use information, is a real issue. We are an active partner in the community. We serve as a venue for school art shows, classroom for adult continuing ed, an office for small business who needs space and high-speed internet. We support all the Title I schools through our bookmobile stops, and we launched our Education and Entrepreneur Center this year. We partnered with Warwick and the University of Maryland Extension Office and the Partnerships for Family and Youth so that children in our community have access to robotic programs and adults have a chance to complete their high school diploma. And every member of this community has equal access to a powerhouse of resources. By developing our business partnership, we have launched the Entrepreneur Center. It has been warmly received. Local businesses have offered training and support and leadership, so this will become the center of entrepreneur activity downtown. We hope that this will formulate new businesses and help them to launch successfully, and that will enrich the local economy. We are an award-winning library, and we do all these things for this community on the smallest per capita budget in the state. In fiscal year 2015, our entire budget, county money, state money, and internally driven fees, came to $2.3 million. That means our per capita funding for fiscal year 14 was $23 a person, the cost of one book. The average per capita funding for Maryland libraries is $44 a person. We are at almost half. When you consider this in light of a study by Beacon that says that the economic impact of Wicomico Public Libraries to this community is $24 million every year, our return on investment for libraries is $10.50 for every dollar given to the library. I repeat that. For every dollar invested in public libraries in this community, we return $10.50 back to the community in economic impact. With hundreds of visitors a day, Wicomico Public Libraries are a vital community resource, a necessity, the anchor for downtown Salisbury, and the best investment of public or private funds. We formally request that we do get put back into the CIP for our new branch project. And we thank the executive and the county for their support in our projects to date. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I found what I was looking for.
Go ahead.
If you can just, no, I'll just be 30 seconds, ma'am. I'm sorry. The CIP, as adopted, as amended and adopted on March 17th, 2015, the Board of Education schedule of projects, the number one priority project is the completion of Bennett Middle School and Phase 3 of James M. Bennett High School. It's number one priority. The number two priority is West Salisbury School systemic renovations or replacement. And the $2 million that was requested from by Mr. Foray is in 2016 funding. It's right in the CIP. What was requested has been funded. Ma'am, I'm sorry that I interrupted you.
That's okay. I'm not going to reiterate on subjects everyone else has talked about tonight. My name is Sandra Smith, former Wicomico County Board employee. My question for you, under your disparity grant, you mentioned highway user revenue. Can you tell me why Wicomico County is not receiving any part of that? And if they are going to get a part, how much is it?
We're receiving, we've been receiving, since the start of recession, we've been receiving about 10% of the formula. So we're receiving on the order of about $650,000 a year. We should be receiving about $7 million a year. Governor Hogan has a plan to restore highway user revenue to its full level. However, that plan would be phased in over an 8-year period. So it will take us 8 years, optimistically, to get back to full funding of highway user revenue, and that's only if A, Governor Hogan is reelected, and B, if the General Assembly agrees to his proposal and appropriates the funding for it. Heretofore, the General Assembly has resisted any further restoration of highway user revenue. So the concern that we have, obviously, is that if we have to continue to take $4 to $5 million a year out of the general fund to keep the roads just together in some way, shape, or form, again, I'm not quite sure where that money is going to come from. It's a very, very deep concern. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Vera Weatherly, and I'm here as a voice for the children. Mm-hmm. The children need a place where they can feel comfortable and be excited about learning. It's hard for you to be excited when you're sweating to the point that you feel like you're about to faint. We love our children. All the children are our children because we don't know who's going to have to give us our last glass of water. So we have to treat our children with respect and put them in a safe and well-lit and comfortable environment.
Understand. If I can also just revisit one other topic that was brought up, the Shorebird Stadium. The Shorebird Stadium is 20 years old now, and the that franchise injects about $17.5 million into the local economy. It generates about $740,000 in tax revenue for the state of Maryland. In order for it to continue as a playable stadium for the Orioles system, certain things have to happen. One of the things that has to happen is that the playing field itself is no longer it no longer meets major league standards. So the field itself has to be replaced, and the lighting has to be upgraded. The deal, if you will, or the agreement that we have struck with Seventh Inning Stretch, who's the basically the tenant. It's just, they own the Shorebirds. They're affiliated with the Baltimore Orioles. The state, through the Maryland Stadium Authority, had agreed to contribute $2,025,000. The county was going to match the $2,025,000. The Shorebirds themselves were going to invest $500,000. That would bring the stadium back to the standard that Major League Baseball looks for, so that the franchise would stay in place here in Wicomico County for another 20 years. So that was the logic behind that decision. The state and the county, based on just the tax revenue that's generated, let alone the economic impact that's generated, the state would recoup their funding in a matter of 3 years. So that was purely, really what should have happened with West Salisbury Elementary. There really is no reason for a school not to have been seriously renovated over the life of a school that age. There really is not. And we're not going to allow that to happen to Shorebird Stadium. It's 20 years old. It needs a proper investment. Had we been investing in West Salisbury Elementary School during its lifetime, we may not be where we are now. Yes, ma'am. Henry Parker Athletic Complex. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That money, no, ma'am. That doesn't. The tournaments. The tournaments themselves. For instance, when the World Series of Softball comes in, that whole operation is really funded through tourism, and tourism generates its revenue from hotel room taxes. The leagues that play, the men's softball league, whoever may play out there, they pay program fees in order to underwrite the operation of that program and to keep those facilities up to standard. So money from the general fund, the money from the general fund that goes to parks and recreation is really for what I'll call the administrative overhead of that department. But the events and the leagues themselves, they pay for themselves. It doesn't come from the taxpayers. Carolyn, how are you?
I'm well. I hope you are as well. Mr. Culver and Mr. Strasberg, it's my privilege to be here to speak tonight. Thank you very much for listening to our comments. I am Carolyn Elmore. I am a Wicomico County resident and a state of Maryland taxpayer as well. I've been here since 1973. I've been employed by the Board of Education as a teacher and administrator, and now am serving as a board member for the Wicomico County Board of Education. I feel like I need to be in church tonight because I have so many folks to say amen to. Reverend Watson and all those supporting the West Salisbury project. Gary Hammer in support of our teachers and other staff members. Principals who spoke, Amy Eskridge and David Harris, calling to your attention the desperate need we have for reading, instruction, and for a school where our children can learn. Air conditioning, repairs of windows, buckets to catch rainwater do not a good learning environment make, and we need to do better there. And thank you for agreeing to help us start that process on the capital improvement project which we presented last fiscal year. I think I'm going to talk about a few things that have not been mentioned tonight as you requested. First of all, we have many mandates placed upon us by the state and federal government. Just as you say you do not do frivolous spending and you have things you have to meet, so does the Board of Education. Before we do anything extra for our children or hire more teachers like the reading and special ed and ESOL teachers we so desperately need, we have to fulfill those mandates. And one of those mandates is transportation of homeless children.
We have 1,500 families, not just children, families in this county who are homeless. Some of those children are placed in Somerset County, Worcester County, Dorchester County, even in Accomack, Virginia, Sussex, Delaware. It is our responsibility. We are mandated to go pick those children up and take them to the school where they are enrolled in this county. To do so costs money, and we have to do that. That might take supplies out of a classroom. It might take something else that we need. That's a mandate that the public does not know about. It's required by law, and we do abide by law at the Wicomico County Board of Education. The cost of doing business, just as it goes up for the county, goes up for us. Just as your personal electricity goes up, the gas that you put in your car has gone down a little bit now, but we have to pay that. We're running buses to pick up children, and they have to have gasoline. We're running schools, lighting, or whatever. Those electricity things have to be funded. I'm sorry, but Delmarva Power isn't going to let us get away without paying the bill. Mr. Willie spoke so eloquently about preserving instruction. Folks, that's why we're here. The most critical element in a classroom is the teacher. And they need to have good, strong, supportive administrators, and we have to pay those people because they can go across the bay and make so much more. They can go to our sister county to the east, and they do. Mr. Hammer remarked that Mr. Middleton used to say, bring them here and get them married and they'll stay. Well, when I ran the new teacher program, that was my mantra. Introduce all the new teachers to each other, get them married, get them buy a house, get settled, have kids, and we just keep everything going. That doesn't work now. Because why not? Because both of them head to our sister to the east or across the bay, and then we lose 2 new teachers. Okay, we really do have to think about education in this county. We have a letter that I think the Daily Times referred to from the State Department about West Salisbury. People need to be educated about the contents of that letter as well. Rebuilding that school is not a frivolous request. It's not a desire, it's a necessity. Now, I don't pretend to speak many languages. English is my favorite and the one I know best, but I ran the ESOL program. When I ran it, we had about 200 children. We now have over 600. We have over 20 languages. And Ms. Malone at the Board of Education has been trying to teach me a little French so I could prepare for a trip my family wants to give me and to take me on. I'm sure you'll be glad to see me over in Paris for a while, so I'm not asking for money all the time. But one phrase that Miss Malone taught me today, and excuse me for murdering it, Miss Malone, is "Ça coûte combien?" How much does it cost? So when I'm shopping over there, I can ask them how much I'm looking at costs. Well, I'm going to leave you with that question. How much does it cost if we don't fund education in this county?
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charles Gosley. I happen to be the first principal of West Salisbury School. And you made a comparison just a few minutes ago in reference to the stadium, and you said the stadium is 20 years old. May I suggest that West Salisbury School is 50 years old, and no renovations have been. And I want to respect you and give you that privilege to. No, I want to just remind myself of what you had said, that some of this should have been happening long before now. But it wasn't happened. It did not happen. So please, if I may please ask you, and I'm out of the school system. I stayed in the school system almost 40 years. I was at West Salisbury School when it opened, and I was at Shipman, I was at East Salisbury, I was at Prince Street, but I've seen the educational process in the county advance, but I've also seen there's some roadblocks that have occurred, and I would just ask that you, as an administrative body in the county, to do what has to be done. And I think I heard you saying something about it might be 4 years before something happens?
No, it wouldn't be 4 years. It would be 4 years.
I understand you said it was...
It'd be 4 years until the school opened, Mr.
Oh, until the school opens.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So in the interim period, what are we going to do with the $2 million that's been...
That's for the planning process. That's money that we use.
So what happens to the heat and the air and the conditions that are currently at the school right now?
That's a question for the Board of Education.
The Board of Education?
That's a question for the Board of Education. They operate that school.
Okay. But the $2 million, where does it?
The $2 million
fit into where does it fit into the scheme?
The $2 million is essentially for what's called it's A&E, architectural engineering.
Okay.
It's the soft costs that precede actually doing construction plans and then going to the actual construction of the school itself. So the $2 million requested in the CIP from the Board of Education are planning funds.
So during the interim period, come May, June, July, September, October, November, whatever, what changes will occur at West Salisbury School that will make it comfortable for those students to go into school and be accommodated?
I can't answer that question. The Board of Education would have to answer that question, Mr. Gossett.
Now, one other point.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make it, I'll sit down. I wonder if any of you, if you have grandchildren or if you have relatives or if any member on the council or the county executive, if we have children, would you be comfortable sending your child to West Salisbury School as it is right now?
Can I say something? It's my turn. It's my turn. You know, I was curious. I grew up in Baltimore County. And I went to an elementary school there. I went to what, in the age of the dinosaurs, we called a junior high school. And then I went to a high school. And just out of curiosity, I went back and I took a look at the Baltimore County Board of Education's website. I went to see what the status of the schools that I went to was. The elementary school that I went to was built in 1953. It's still operating. Still operating, 1953. The middle school I went to was built in 1959, still operating. The high school I went to was built in 1957, still operating. Why?
So what's your point?
My point is, Baltimore County did not let happen to the schools I went to what happened to West Salisbury Elementary School.
I have a similar experience. I'm 72. My dad taught. The high school that he taught in before I was born in 42, Rock Falls, Illinois. Okay? It was not new then. They put on a new gym. That school, I went back for my 50th high school reunion. That school was maintained. That school is still in use, good condition, and they intend to continue using it. So there's a problem here. The problem's with your Board of Education. You have a right to a decent school for your children. We all do. We all want good schools. We also know that it doesn't happen fast. There's a lot of money involved, and we're not really a rich area. We'll get there. Maybe not as fast as we'd like to. But We need to maintain what we have. We need a different attitude. We can't rebuild every school every so many years. If the high school that I went to, that was built before I was born, and I'm 72, is still functional, then what are we doing wrong or different? And what, when we build a school, do we need to look at so that we have a school that's built, that we can maintain it, and what kind of a program do we need to sponsor so we can continue good maintenance and keep our schools? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kim Hudson. I am a Wicomico County resident, a mom of 2 children in our schools, and I am also a current board member for Wicomico County Public Schools. Wow. What's happening right here, is why we have found ourselves in the position that we've been in for many years. This is Wicomico County. This is not public schools against county council or county executive. And the only way we continue to move forward is when we put all of that aside and we realize that Wicomico County public schools are an integral part of Wicomico County. I would like to reiterate a letter that Dr. Elmore referenced that came from the State Department, from a Dr. Lever, who is in charge of the
school construction
funding. No, what is his IAC, please? Thank you, the IAC, the interagency that is the, and I'm sorry. The IAC is the committee that works with public school education, public construction funds. Thank you. They are the precursor to the Board of Public Works that allows for funding from the state. Dr. Lever's letter referenced West Salisbury. It referenced other projects that Wicomico County has done recently. And actually, it highlighted that Maryland and Wicomico County is not a build-it-first community. That we have, and Maryland as a state takes the stance that you fix what you can. That is what we have done. Our facilities department, I wish Mr. Foray were here tonight because he deserves a huge round of applause for maintaining the buildings with the resources that we have. West Salisbury and other schools have been taken out of the queue because funding was not there. The capital budget has to be approved, and it does have to come from our county. Our state many times has put money in, and our county did not. We have to stop pointing fingers. It is not working. I want to ask tonight what our vision is for our community, because what we hear and what we've heard for probably the last 4 years is that there's not enough revenue. And tonight we listened to the cuts that have been made by the departments, and we're still saying there's not enough revenue. So what is our vision? What is our goal? Because I can tell you, one of the biggest investments for a community is education. It is what brings people to a community, and it is a reason why people leave. And if we do not invest, and that's what it is an investment. If we do not invest in our education system in this community, and not just through our words, but through our actions, then the revenue is not going to come. What is our goal? What is our vision? How are we going to stop having to cut, cut, cut? Money doesn't grow on trees, Wayne, but there has to be a plan, and we have to invest. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Johnny Miller, and I'm a resident here in Wicomico County. I was born and raised here. And I heard the the young lady say about a vision here in Wicomico County. Well, I'll tell you what we need as far as a vision in Wicomico County. We need a spiritual awakening here to recognize that God is the power of above, and He can heal this county of its finances. And if you'll just acknowledge Him, bring the commandments back into the school, the finances will take care of themselves. I mean, we've taken the 10 Commandments out of the schools, and look at what's happened. So, you know, I wanted to make a few points here. You know, look, there's 101,000 residents in Wicomico County, and I look back here. I was here last year for the budget hearing, and for 10 years now in a row, the per capita net taxable income of every single resident in this county has gone down from $13,906 to $13,875. So we're at right now per capita net taxable income where we're actually lower than we were in 2004. That's how bad our economy is. We've lost so many employers here in Wicomico. We've had over 36 months now with no positive job growth. So, you know, there's something wrong here. You know, China's blown right by us. India's on our tail. And you look and you say, well, what's the problem? What's the problem? Well, it's a spiritual battle we have here. And if you'll just sit and you know, I'm 58 years old, and I can tell you, I've seen it, you know, I tithe, and I can tell, I don't know why business comes to me. All I can tell you is if you give the 10% to the Lord, He will provide. And so, it's not all that hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Good evening. I'm Eddie Boyd.
How are you, Dr. Boyd?
Good.
Good.
Two things I'd like to comment on, and following Mrs. Hudson's remarks regarding the acrimony that seems to exist between the Board of Education and the county. And certainly no one wins when there's acrimony.
Agreed.
And to address that, there are a couple of slides that you've shown that really sort of illustrates to me where you were sort of attempting, and maybe that wasn't an attempt, it certainly jumped out at me as an attempt, to play one against the other. And that's the slide where you showed this slide. If you'd bring that one up again, where you compare the county's P&I along with the Board of Education P&I. But there's really no reason to play one against the other that I could see, other than to create division.
No, I think there is. I think there is. I think there is. I think the reason that we showed that graph is that we continue to be told that we don't invest in education, and we're trying to show that we do invest in education. We built a new high school, a new middle school at a cost of $82 million. We have P&I up here that clearly shows that we invest in education. We have that slide that clearly shows that we invest in education. So acrimony works in both directions.
Right, okay.
I'm trying to correct the record here.
The other slide, well, for example, let me talk about this slide for just a second. The debt services is debt services. So I'm not sure why it's important. Once we have debt services, it is debt services. It's the county's debt service. So why then is debt service included in the slide where you have education 44.29%, and you include the debt service to education, and then you have another debt service which is only 1.56%, and I assume that's all of the other debt service in the county. So why is there a need to pull the debt service apart as if the county isn't responsible for all of the debt services?
Debt service is important to talk about at these meetings because of our ability to incur debt. Let's go back to the CIP.
Well, I understand it's important that we
Okay.
talk about it, but I mean, why is it
It's
important,
important to
to
manage it.
separate them?
It's important to manage it because I'm trying to demonstrate the investment that the county does make in education.
Yes, and I
that's my
understand
own
that,
reason for
but,
doing it,
but
Dr.
it is debt service, and it's, you know, you didn't pull out the debt service, if there is any, for the detention center,
There is
and
none.
show that as a separate item. You know, so it just seems like there's this effort to treat education a bit different from the rest of the county. And then the other thing, I guess, you mentioned how if you went back to your high school and et cetera,
Yes.
how they're still standing. I remember I had a conversation with the late president of the county council, Henry Parker, and if he was here tonight, he would say the high school that he graduated from in 1936, which is now Wicomico Middle, and it's still serving students. So that's, you know, just because one school has had to be rebuilt doesn't mean that there aren't schools like Y Middle, and God knows, I'm sure it really does need to be done something with after West Salisbury is done. But surely there are examples of schools in this county that folk can point to, and we don't have to go back to Baltimore City, we don't have to go to Illinois and say they're still standing. So it's not as if every school that was ever built here is torn down in 20 years. I mean, that's just the wrong impression, and there's no need to try and create that impression.
If I can respond to that, Dr. Boyd, the West Salisbury Elementary School, when I visited that school, I would tell you that I think it's a very well-maintained school.
Right.
It's a very well-maintained school.
So then,
It's been in need of systemic renovation for quite some time. And this year, in the capital improvement plan, we made a concerted effort to approve every single priority systemic renovation request that the Board of Education made, because what we're trying to prevent is a 40-year lapse. The problem with the school is that it never received any systemic renovations. It wasn't looked at for air conditioning. It wasn't looked at for a number of the basic needs that you would expect in a modern building. That was my point. My point was the schools that I went to, and I was just very interested to see what's the status of the schools I went to. They've undergone periodic systemic renovations to keep them habitable, if you will, and to keep the learning environment in those facilities what it should be. That was my point.
yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's John Palmer. I live in Delmar, Maryland, and I can kind of echo what Kim said. Is wow, what a meeting. A lot has come out tonight. I've been coming to these meetings for about 12 years now. I don't think I've missed a budget meeting, and a lot of times I see who's around. I haven't seen a lot of people in this room at all of these budget hearings, so it would be nice if everybody can get out to all the budget meetings and not just when it comes to one area. I do want to point something out. You notice you didn't get those little pages tonight that had 8 or 9 pages with all the graphs and all on it. And people were complaining they didn't get that. Well, that's because our new county executive is going to do one better. Yeah, I know, I hear some snickering, but he's going to do one better. And let me tell you, each of the 10 years I've come here, I've always asked, could you please put a copy of the real budget someplace so that the people can look and see where the money is actually going, not in those 8 or 9 little pages that are normally handed out. So I asked the new county executive about this, and he said, sure, John, I don't see any problem with that. Where do you want to have it put? So right away I suggested the Maryland room over in the library. And I think that would be a good place to put it so that each and every one of you can go to it and actually see where all the money is going that we're talking about here. This is one way to find out the truth. And you got to find out the truth, what's going on. I hear a lot of innuendos and things that aren't exactly up to where it should be. Let me give you just a couple of them. A few weeks ago, I was reading in the newspaper about West Salisbury, and it said the school was totally unsafe. It was a fire hazard. It's not safe for the kids. And everybody was up in an uproar. And then just at a recent county council meeting, the county executive went and got the state fire marshal, and the fire marshal did an investigation and said, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. So my point here is, where's the truth? You got to find the truth and then make your own decisions. I heard somebody mention about the poor lighting or bad lighting at West Salisbury. I was in that school not too long ago, and I wish Mr. Foyer was here, because it looks to me that there has been a lighting upgrade in your school at some time in the past, has it? And new lights have been put in there. They look like it's the LED style lighting. And when I toured that whole school, and I got in most of the rooms, I found one light bulb out. So I think that's very good for the maintenance crew. They do an excellent job. So where's the real truth? What I suggest is that everybody here, instead of just coming to a meeting and dumping on the new county executive, let's get out there and let's find out what the truth is. And then let's come to these meetings and put the truth out there so that we can make some real educated decisions. And Mr. Miller brought up a real good point about God in the school system. Where was everybody when God was taken out of the classroom? Nobody was beating down the doors of the office up there at Mr. Fredrickson's building. Nobody was out in the streets, but yet God was taken out of the classroom. Think about it. Thank you.
I'll be real brief. Thank you, County Exec, for giving us this opportunity, and thank all the residents for coming out and expressing your views. That's one beautiful thing about democracy. One man, one vote, and we all have a view, have hopefully a researched opinion, and then we come to some conclusion. A lot of things can be changed and improved, but with regards to truth, Mr. Palmer, 40 years without any serious renovations, what more needs to be said? 50 years, I'm sorry. I'm corrected. 50 years. We would not be in this situation had leadership at the time made a concerted effort to say the West Salisbury Elementary students deserve the same as our finest in the community. That's been a great challenge in our society for decades, for generations. Let me share with you, anybody in here over 50 years of age knows and probably attended schools where there was inadequate funding, not enough resources, not enough support staff. But I will share with you, I attended those schools, and we had principals like Mr. Gosley here, and had teachers and support staff who said each one of these children that come in here are going to learn, they can learn, and we're going to support them, even though we have been inadequately funded and have been given secondhand books. That's on record. That's a fact. And yet I was able, and there are others along with me in my generation, to go to college, gain an undergraduate degree with honors, graduate degree with honors. What I'm sharing with you guys, if we come together, can resolve some of these issues. And what I'm suggesting to you, Mr. Carver, and the superintendent of the school systems, Stop looking in the same place for answers. If you look in the same place for answers which are failing you currently, they call that craziness. They call it insanity. What I'm suggesting, look outside of the box. Bring in people who have new, innovative, creative 21st century ideas about how we can get this done and how we can get this accomplished. They are in your community. And oftentimes they don't participate because there's a whole lot of politics and a whole lot of wrangling, and at the end of the day, we're still at the same place. You have a young core group of people in this community who have excellent ideas, who are about building this community, who are not looking to large corporations to resolve our financial issues and get us out of this economic moray that we're in. Tap into them. And I would suggest, with regards to education, tap into Mr. Gosler's generation and all those retired teachers who taught thousands and tens of thousands of students without having adequate resources. They were underfunded, under-resourced institutions. Even in today, 2015, we have HBCUs who have been declared, and it's acknowledged, states have not been properly funding them. And I'm using that example because if that's higher ed, what in the world do you think happens at the elementary level, middle school, and so forth? It's a challenge. So what I'm suggesting, again, is that we pull together, that you, Mr. Carver, and I'm sorry you only had 3 months or 3 hours, however much time it was to look over all the problems, but now remember, you had already set out for this position. And so you have to go and look at what it is you're going to receive. I'm going to share something else with you. The Democrats are not going to solve your problem, nor are the Republicans. We need to get out of that. We belong to Wicomico County, no matter what town you come from. We're all part of Wicomico County, and I'm suggesting to you that there's enough brain power, there's enough will, determination, and God yet looks over all of us. And with regards to not being available when they took God out of school, they never took God out of school. They just claimed you couldn't pray. But who can stop me from praying? Do you know when I'm praying? Many of us wasn't of that generation. We couldn't participate or couldn't vote. So let's come together and resolve the issues and stop pointing fingers. We're bigger than that.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. I appreciate that.
I want to talk. My name is Vanessa Miles Bibbins, and I am employed at the Wicomico County Board of Education. I am a daytime flex, which I go to all of the schools. First of all, I want to say that our schools does not go under-maintained. Whenever there's a problem in our school system, they do get fixed. If it's something that if it's something that can't be fixed by the employees that are employed there, they do have outside contractors to come in and fix them. So for the guy that said that our schools, that our system or whatever is not getting done, our schools do get fixed. And as far as the safe school by the fire department, the fire department, they don't come around and see what's in our school system, you know, as far as the kids not being educated in closets and stuff. They come around and do fire safety inspections. Not safe schools. Safe schools is, well, safe schools for us is making sure the schools are locked down and safe. So that's safe schools. And about the lighting or whatever at West Salisbury, this school is not fit for kids. And I go to every school in here, and I done been to every school. Everybody knows me at the board. I done been to every school around here, and there's a lot of schools that need repair. And if they need repair, not the custodian staff, but the staff from the board does what needs to be done. So they're not being taken care of. So I just want to put that out, and I want to say that the school, I think we should need a new school, and we need a new school.
Okay. Thank you.
Point blank. I'm there, and it's a lot of other schools that need, probably could, like Beaver Run, there's a lot of schools that need stuff to be done. But I think West Salisbury deserves a new school.
Thank you.
A new school.
Well, as I said, I want to try, because of some TV things here, I want to try to wrap some things up, but I want everybody to know that this PowerPoint that you've seen up here tonight will be on the website as of tomorrow morning. Mr. Palmer is right. We are going to put the full budget. Once the council gets the budget next week, it will be in the library if that's okay with the library staff. If not, it will be up to my office. You're welcome to come in my office and sit and look at it. No problem. So I really do appreciate everybody's concern, and I really appreciate everybody's comments. So if there's anything anybody needs to talk to me, I'll stay right here as long as anybody wants, but we will continue working on it. So thank you all very much for coming out.